Great, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for Creatio's webinar. Today is a great occasion because we're going to be discussing the best practices for driving innovation and agility with low-code technology for credit unions. My name is Creatio, and I'm really looking forward to helping lead this discussion today. And we welcome you to post all of your questions in the chat section throughout the webinar. Following the discussion, we'll provide all registered participants with a recording of the webinar and answer any unanswered questions offline. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Eric Hale. Eric is our Global Head of Sales Enablement. And again, my name is Creatio. I'm a Communications Manager at Creatio, and I'll be your host. So off to you, Eric.
Great, thanks, Corey, and welcome everyone. In order to understand the need to innovate and transform within credit unions, they really need to analyze the challenges that they face today, but also anticipate the challenges that they're going to face in the near and long term. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with some of the challenges that credit unions are facing today. If I can get my mouse to work, there we go. So as we know, guys, competition in financial services is constantly growing. Credit unions, they don't have to just consider the usual suspects of big banks, community banks, or other credit unions, but they now also have to focus on non-traditional competitors like fintechs and online banks. In this year alone, fintech is anticipated to disrupt up to 4.7 trillion in revenue from traditional institutions. To put that into perspective, the online bank Chime alone has attracted more than 2 million customers and is adding more customers per month than heavy hitters like Wells Fargo or Citi. Obviously this is getting to be more and more of a challenge for them. These are the current trends that the market recognizes, but what about the competitors that we haven't even thought about yet? How long before we see Amazon enter into the market? And again, how many people on this call have the Apple credit card already? So, we need to anticipate what will be next, right? And it'll be those organizations, those credit unions that can anticipate consumer preferences that will do well and thrive in any environment that they're faced with. So just like the competitive landscape is changing for credit unions, so are consumer expectations as well. So, not to pick on Amazon again, but they really have spoiled us in the way that we interact with organizations. So if we think about like the Amazon Prime experience, I can pretty much find any product I'm looking for, even multiple versions of that product, in just a few clicks. I can also research the products by looking at reviews. I can get crowdsourced answers to my questions, but I can also order that product within one click and not have to enter anything like my shipping information or my billing information, and I can have it to my house within 2 days for free. So if you think about that experience, it's pretty amazing. But it's this kind of service that is really changing our expectations as consumers, right? We are expecting this level of availability and ease of doing business in every aspect of our lives, including the way that we manage our finances. And this is me talking as a slightly older Generation Xer. So if you can imagine the expectations of the generations who have known nothing but the digital age, they fully expect to have easy and fast access to any information and support whenever and wherever they want it. And they don't expect it to cost anything additional for that level of service, right? It's just expected. So I love the statistic on the screen because I have, two of these that fall into this category at home, and they really want zero advice or help from dad when it comes to their money. But it states that 87% of Gen Zers prefer a do-it-yourself approach to finances. So how do credit unions empower them with information and tools necessary to manage their finances without, without having direct involvement with them. So they need to kind of break that code with that generation of people that are coming up in the digital age and managing to their expectations, because these are, our future customers. So, and if we talk about consumer preferences and expectations, we also have to talk about employee preferences and expectations, right? These are your internal customers, and they need the same level of care and feeding that your customers do. So if there's one true thing that differentiates credit unions from other financial institutions, is that culture far outweighs strategy. So you can have the best laid plans for creating tremendous member experiences, but without happy and empowered employees to execute on that strategy, those plans are ultimately going to fail. So this is where intelligent technology can foster culture by giving your employees the necessary tools to provide the best, most efficient way to manage those engagements or interactions with your members. So if we take a look at this statistic, right, 68% of workers, 68% of workers switch apps 10 times an hour, wasting more than a full hour a day. So this is not what employees want to be doing, and it can actually make them feel like it's difficult to deal with member requests. So that that can ultimately transfer onto your members, right? Your frontline employees, they want to provide a great experience, but because of that complexity, they have this feeling of dread that, again, might affect the way that members perceive how they're being supported. So that's why, if we empower employees with the tools to be informed and efficient, they're happy, and then that feeling is what gets transferred to the member, right? That's going to create a better member experience across the board if you have employees that are happy. So in order to adapt to the changing consumer expectations and provide differentiated member experiences, credit unions and their management teams really need visibility into the vast amounts of data that they're collecting on members, right? The challenge is that most organizations face is that this data is housed in multiple systems that are not connected, which is really creating data silos and does not give a clear picture on how they engage their members. What their goals are, how are they connected with others in the community, how does data flow from business unit to business unit within the credit union. So if we look at this quote from AICPA, 1/3 of finance leaders say that their organizational structure is too complex and data is held in silos. So this has really forced credit unions to try and manage the member experience and processes through legacy core systems that just were not designed to provide member profiles or interconnect functions across the credit union itself. So a great test of a credit union's digital maturity is really to ask, how do they pull up member data? Is it by member name or is it by account number? So, if we look at legacy systems, this is how they manage data, right? They manage data by account number. So, they look at each individual member as an account number, not as an individual. So that's really where we need to start building better profiles and better ways of understanding how our customers interact with the credit union, but also how we support that customer throughout multiple business units across the credit union.
Great, thank you so much, Eric. That was a great first part of our discussion. And like we said, when we opened up the discussion today, we hope to make this very interactive. Want to make sure you guys are engaged and can put your questions in. And right now we're going to actually start with the first poll. So the question that we want to ask everyone is, which of the above mentioned market challenges have you experienced? And while we just give you a quick minute to respond to that question, how about we take a question from the chat, Eric?
Yeah, that'll work.
Great. All right, so how can CRM help credit unions, for example, streamline all member-facing processes?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we have a slide later on in the presentation that will actually highlight exactly how they can accomplish it. But if we think about all of the different processes that we have to support members, a lot of that, again, is just there's different technologies managing that. So the ability to interconnect all of those different data silos, all of those different systems into a single view for both frontline and back office teams, being able to streamline that under one specific profile or one specific screen will help combine all of that data and make sure that there's no breakdowns in any of the processes. Because if we think about how members engage with a credit union, there's multiple areas that need to be coordinated. You may be in a branch location, but there's some back office teams that will need to say, process an account opening. All of that needs to flow seamlessly. And if you don't have a tool that can bring all of that data together, there's a lot of points of failure in that process. So that's how bringing all of that into a single platform, all of this data, will enable them to create better experiences for their members.
Great, thank you so much, Eric. Now let's take a look at the results.
Nope, we have a delay here. There we go. Perfect.
Great, thank you. Okay, so our viewers have said employees are loaded with paper and manual work, and yes, while we agree that, and we recognize that many of these challenges from the poll pose hurdles for organizations, we agree that this is definitely one that comes up often. And today we'll discuss further and emphasize how Creatio supports businesses to avoid this challenge in particular. So Eric, let's continue with the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely, and great to see those poll results, because it actually speaks to what we see in the market as well, right? Typically, they're trying to manage member interactions through through legacy systems that just aren't available, and then also there's a lot of processes or a lot of documents and things that could be automated utilizing tools. So great to see that everybody is kind of on the same page as that. Perfect. Okay, so I can get my mouse to work here. Bear with me, guys. There we go. All right. So we looked at some of the key challenges that credit unions face, but there are many more outside of the challenges we discussed, but these are key. So what we're going to move into now is, let's discuss what are some of the best practices to overcome these challenges. So first, I can express, and I think that everybody sees here on this call, that it's very important for credit unions to create seamless digital experiences for their members. We discussed the Amazon effect on consumer behavior. So you need to provide an experience as close to that or as possible for members. So if we go back to, let's say for an example, the financial crisis of 2008, customers were leaving big banks in droves and flocking to credit unions because of the differentiated services and security they could gain by going to a credit union. But if we fast forward to today, big banks are becoming relevant again due to the seemingly unlimited resources that they have to provide more services and differentiated products. So if we think about some of the things that are common now, mobile banking applications, digital deposits, things like that, those were all generated by big banks creating additional technologies to support their members. So it's important that credit unions keep up with that in order to remain relevant. And again, it's getting more and more challenging, because there seems to be new applications on a daily basis that they need to incorporate into their processes. So creating that digital member experience is going to be key, and being able to keep up with the ever-changing processes, right? Like it seems like every month there's a new application that comes out, from a financial services organization that you need to keep up with and be agile enough to make sure that you're offering the same level, but not only the same level, but more, right? What's going to differentiate you? So we can create, again, the great strategy for member experience, but also need to empower employees to execute on that strategies. In a few slides, we'll be looking at, again, those processes and points of engagement that need to be coordinated across credit unions. So when I speak to front office employees of credit unions, their number one frustration is not being able to efficiently manage member requests. I find that each and every one of them, especially at credit unions, want to provide that level of service that goes above and beyond member expectations. However, they lack the tools to kind of coordinate that experience due to the siloed systems and data that they need to navigate just in order to manage that single engagement. So really, as we discussed, the answer is to, kind of coordinate all of the siloed systems and data into a single pane of glass. And along with that, helping to simplify the transaction for the frontline employee, you can also analyze all of that combined data to build better member profiles that will help every employee understand how to better serve members. But it also helps them reach their overall goals as well, right? So every employee can understand the members' goals, their desires, who they're connected to, so they can make recommendations on what the next best action or the next best offer for that member is, and then also increase their participation in the credit union, which will also help to gain more share of wallet from those members and get them to be, full-fledged members of the credit union. Right, so one of the best ways to describe coordinating efforts between front office and back office functions at a credit union is lending processes. So if we think about how a member secures a new loan, we can clearly see why this is important to streamline the coordination between back office and front office. So let's say a member, comes into a local branch and applies for a personal loan. There'll be an application they have to fill out. That application has to run through several approval processes, credit check, etc. If it's approved, there's going to be additional forms and contracts that need to be filled out. And then once it's signed, it's going to go through the loan origination process, underwriting, etc. And then it's going to get distributed to the member. So there also may be an onboarding process that the member has to set up, an auto withdrawal or paperless billing. How do we get them onboarded and utilizing the different payment methods that we have? So we can see that is a lot of coordination between many different departments and many different systems. So we can see that each one of these functions actually rely on one another. And if there's a breakdown in that process, which can easily happen because most of the time they're managed in different systems, it can lead to poor member experience. But also if there are a lot of manual repetitive tasks, let's say for an example, filling out the same data on multiple forms, name, address, all of that good stuff. If you have to keep filling that out on multiple forms, it's not going to be a great experience either for that member. So credit unions really need to find a way to streamline and automate the way that data and information flows between their diverse teams. So this is really a great example of why we need to have that front and back office integration, both from a technology perspective, but also from a member experience perspective. Once those things are flowing seamlessly, it's only going to help organizations better serve their members, but also, again, create that better experience for them as well. And it looks like we have another poll.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Eric, for the second part of our discussion. And yes, another poll. So which initiatives are you planning to undertake to prepare for the digital future? And I think while we let our audience just answer another poll question, Eric, maybe we answer a question from the chat.
Absolutely.
So what does the integration process look like, and what are the main steps?
Yeah, got it. You know, integration is going to vary credit union to credit union, but you know, because each have their own legacy technology stack. But you know, the way that, you know, we look at combining all of this data into a single platform, you know, again, from our case would be, you know, a CRM platform that can provide that single pane of glass. We look at it from the perspective of, you know, what data needs to transfer into the CRM. So, you know, typically we'll see integrations with, let's say, core banking system right off the bat, right? Because that's where all of their member data is housed. So we accomplish that through, you know, multiple, you know, sources. You know, we have a full open sourced API that we can, you know, build a bi-directional integration with the core system to get all of that member data, you know, into customer records, so we can start to build those profiles in CRM. And we also have a number of pre-built connectors that we can use to, you know, connect to other third-party applications. So whether those are lending systems, telephony systems, it could be email servers. You know, we want to make sure that we combine all of the disparate technologies into a single view, so that way we don't get the swivel chair effect when trying to work with you know, member transactions. You're not having to go from one system to another system just to manage you know, a single interaction. So we start with, you know, where all of the data is housed. We bring that into the CRM, and then it's a matter of you know, setting up all of those connection points and then delivering that into the CRM so we can have the you know, the member profile together.
Excellent, thank you, Eric. I think that was a very helpful response for our viewers. So let's take a look at the poll results and then we'll proceed. So the most answered response was embrace digital channels to deliver services to members. You know, and while we, you know, at Creatio, we believe that all of these initiatives are important to take now for businesses who can really perform much better with use of technology. This is definitely an important one. So I see that there's a lot of all of them responses as well, and we certainly agree. So let's move on with the discussion.
Great. Oh, it wouldn't be a webinar without some technical difficulty. It's Monday morning as well for us here in
of course.
Oh, there we go. Now we're moving.
Great. Now I think we just skipped ahead a few times, but that is why at Creatio, you know, we believe it's important to, you know, to lead the pack and lead those in the industry and take advantages of solutions that allow you to transform your business and automate. You know, so we say be a disruptor, don't be disrupted. You know, take initiative, adopt these technologies so that you can allow yourself to be an industry leader. And when it comes to, yeah, you know, to member of customer experience, you know, you need to be at the cutting edge and not the bleeding edge, as my colleague Eric says. You know, we can talk a bit more about how Creatio helps to, you know, demonstrate this and how we support companies to be on the cutting edge. And that is why we, you know, we want to emphasize our vision here, emphasize that it's important for, you know, we believe that we create a world where anyone can automate business ideas within minutes, and users with little to no coding experience can automate processes and simplify daily tasks. You know, we make organizations industry disruptors and leaders. And just to talk a bit about Creatio, well, this will be a reminder for many of you who are familiar with our organization. You know, we are a very globally diverse organization with 5 offices worldwide. And these offices are home to over 650 employees. We have a robust and continuously growing channel network of over 700 partners worldwide. And this large global presence of employees and partners enables Creatio to deliver solutions in over 110 companies, and we're very, very proud of this impressive reach. We've also received excellent analyst recognition over the course of the last few years by industry thought leaders such as analysts from Gartner and Forrester, and we're going to talk a bit more about our Gartner recognition here. We are recognized in 5 Gartner Magic Quadrants. We are a leader in 2 of these Magic Quadrants, the Magic Quadrant for Salesforce Automation and the Magic Quadrant for CRM Lead Management, as well as the Magic Quadrant for CRM Customer Engagement Centers, and 2 additional Magic Quadrants that emphasize our low-code and process automation capabilities, low-code application platforms, and intelligent business management suites. Similarly, we've received great analyst recognition from Forrester. We are in 7 Forrester waves, the majority of which we are included as strong performers in, which is just excellent, and we're very proud of it. The 2 former of these Forrester waves really speak to our low-code and process automation capabilities, while the latter 5 actually emphasize our CRM and our SFA capabilities. So we look forward to seeing how leading analysts from Gartner and Forrester continue to evaluate our offering. And so, we provide a low-code platform for process management and CRM. We have a truly unique and flexible platform that allows users, again, with little to no coding skills, to automate and change processes quickly. And as mentioned earlier, this superior offering helps thousands of customers worldwide, and we help companies to overcome, many of the challenges that we noted in the poll earlier today. And we accomplish this through our unique core differentiators, otherwise, recently referred to as our Creatio superpowers. And we highlight those as a business process management engine to change processes faster, a low-code application platform to make everyone a developer, and a unified CRM to align sales, service, and marketing. These are really our Creatio superpowers. These are what differentiates us from other vendors out there and really helps us to drive powerful results for our users. So Eric, on to you to finish up the rest of our discussion.
Great, thanks, Corinne. So we've talked about challenges, best practices, and Corinne has just done a great job about talking how the Creatio platform can help credit unions start to manage some of those challenges and best practices. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to give kind of a visual representation of what that looks like. So the next slide. Sorry, guys, I just went on mute for some reason. But what I wanted to show was, some of those processes and some of those front office and back office applications that we talked about as being a challenge. So again, this is a kind of a busy slide, but it's that way for a reason, because we want to highlight all of the different aspects of what needs to be coordinated from a business perspective at credit unions. So if we start from the left-hand side here, we see the key business processes that credit unions have, right? It starts with typical CRM functionality, sales, marketing, service automation. How do we support these individuals in our activities with them, manage the engagements, manage those profiles, have everything in one single pane of glass for that customer, so that way we can manage those functions easily. Secondly, we have front office applications. So again, those are your folks that are sitting in your branch locations, they are in your contact centers, they're the ones that are interacting and engaging with those members. So all of those front office processes that we have, so whether that's customer onboarding, account opening, where the lending process begins, all of that is managed, again, in that front office portion of credit unions. But beyond that, in lending was a great example of this, right? So if the lending process starts in the front office, there's also all of this middle office and back office coordination that it's going to need to take to manage that whole process. So the coordination between the front office and the back office is really where we're going to start to see the ability to kind of coordinate that and streamline. So again, lending process starts in the front office, but then moves to those middle office applications or processes such as verification, underwriting, also where you can start to manage compliance as well, right? So as we know, the financial services industry is one of the most highly regulated industries out there. I can't decide what's more highly regulated, healthcare or financial services, but there are a lot of processes that you have to follow as a credit union, and these keep changing as well. So the ability to adapt to all of that compliance management, right? So whether that's know your customer or anti-money laundering processes, GDPR, all of this needs to be managed as those transactions are taking place. And then the fourth section, we talked about managing the employee experience and empowering them with tools that they need to manage their day-to-day activities. So usually, as a credit union, you'll have diverse teams, right? There'll be teams that are remote at different branch locations. You'll have people in contact centers, your business operations team. All of them, need support for several different things, whether that's human resource related, so things like hiring, onboarding, offboarding, all of those processes that are typically managed within HR can also be streamlined utilizing process-driven CRM. Also, how about things like internal support of equipment? So if you're in a branch location and your telephone system goes down or computer stops working, how do you get support for that in a branch remote location? Also having the ability to gain service from your internal support team directly through a process-driven CRM. So again, that really makes that employee experience a lot better because you are equipping them with tools to kind of manage all of those different processes that they have internally as well. So if we move into the middle section, that's what we're trying to accomplish through Creatio. You can see everything either starts with the 360-degree customer view, or if we're talking about those back office applications, could be employee view. But building that profile of that customer is where everything starts, and having all of that data in one location is really what's going to create those better experiences. So as you can see, next to each one of them are several of the processes that need to happen. So again, whether that's CRM and you're talking about segmenting customers, your lead management, opportunity management, all of that are processes that need to be coordinated. And again, those could be housed in different systems. We start to move to the front office, right? So that maybe that's account opening, onboarding of new customers, starting the application process. All of that, needs to be, managed in a single view, right? So that's why we create these 360-degree customer profiles. And then again, we want to coordinate with all of the back office and middle office applications. So once we start to take in that data, we can start to build upon that and coordinate that whole transaction throughout, start to finish. And as we move to the right-hand side of the document here, this is really where we start to talk about the abilities of the process-driven CRM and business process management capabilities of Creatio. So once we have all of this data, we're able to build analytics and dashboards on all of this data, which may not have been possible before because that data is housed in disparate systems. So now that we're combining all of the data in a CRM, we can start to run analytics and again, build that better profile, understand consumer preferences, their goals, their aspirations. So that way we can offer the next best product or the next best action for that particular customer. Secondly, we have business process management and dynamic case management. So when we think about those front to back office processes, this is really where we can drive that process across multiple applications utilizing business process management. So it's not only for how the data flows within the CRM, but also coordinating that business process management and workflows throughout multiple systems and multiple departments within the credit union. So that's really where we have the ability to drive those across multiple applications and multiple business units. This also, to the fourth bar's point, productivity and collaboration. So, you know, I can't tell you how many times I've run across opportunities where credit unions may have run into challenges with multiple organizations calling on the same customer, right? So they don't understand who's talking to that particular member, what the last transaction was, you know, so it could lead to poor member experience if they have multiple groups reaching out to that particular customer. So how do we collaborate on communication strategy with the customer? How do we manage productivity to say, okay, I'm working with this particular member, but they inquired about, let's say, a mortgage. How do I hand that off to, you know, maybe our mortgage lending team as an opportunity? How do we create productivity again with those processes? If you know, documents need to be you know, filled out, how do we coordinate that utilizing the member profile? So these are all things that can be managed through the CRM, right? We can give you the collaboration and the productivity tools to ensure that you're providing the best member experience. And then we had that great question come in on the chat about integration and synchronization. As we know, there are a lot of applications that a credit union will need to utilize. CRM is never going to take the place of your core banking system. Core banking system is really where you're managing all the financials, all of the accounts, all of that great data that's stored within the core system. You know, still will be there, right? You can't manage that within a CRM. So what you need to do is you need to create, you know, a synchronization process where that data is housed there, but when we need it to build the customer profile, we can have that updated in the CRM and vice versa. Anything that we do in the CRM goes back into core banking. And you know, that's really what integration and synchronization is about. We're not trying to take the place of you know, these systems, although we can in certain circumstances. But again, we will never, you know, take the place of things like lending systems, core banking systems. But what we can do is we can synchronize that data and bring it into a single pane of glass for the organization. So this is you know, a good representation of you know, all of the different things that you know, CRM and business process management can bring to a credit union. So let's talk about this in practice. We have a use case or a success story that we had with End Credit Union. End Credit Union is one of the top 25 credit unions in the US. They have over 330,000 members and manage about 5.4 billion in assets. So when Ent came to Creatio, they had a couple of immediate challenges that they were having due to lack of the proper tools to manage it. So first was indirect member onboarding. And when we talk about indirect member onboarding, think of a consumer going into an auto dealership to purchase a new car in one of the markets that Ent services. You know, they will more than likely have that loan processed through Ent because they are one of, or if not the largest auto loan provider in their region. So that customer knows that they have their loan being processed through Ent, but they may not understand that they become full-fledged members of the credit union as a result of that auto loan. So they can start to take advantage of you know, all of the benefits that Ent has to offer to their members. So what that means is that they have a single transaction or a single product with the credit union. And Ent wanted to be able to offer you know, additional products to these indirect members, so that they can own more of that customer relationship. How do they get them to open a deposit account, or maybe move their mortgage over to the credit union, open up a credit card, etc. But beyond that, how do we onboard them as well, right? So, one of the top challenges that can be with third party members is that they come on board. How do we service that loan? How do we set up all of the the payment options, all of that good stuff? So that was another challenge that and had one of the top 3 reasons people were calling in from an indirect member perspective was that, hey, we need to know how to set up payments, automatic payments. So how do we coordinate that with a communication strategy to enable that, to stem those calls coming in? How do we proactively reach out and tell them how to do that? So that was one challenge. So that particular challenge, by being able to gain more products out of that particular member and streamline the onboarding process, not only benefited the credit union, but it's also creating better opportunities and services for that particular member. So that was a big challenge for them. Secondly, they also wanted to manage interactions with their corporate clients and prospects as well. So they needed more of a traditional CRM functionality, manage the interactions, track the progress of their opportunities, create a communication strategy between different departments. As I alluded to earlier, maybe they're talking to specific business, about a loan, but maybe they need a building loan that may go to a different department within the credit union. So how do we coordinate that communication strategy as well? So these were 2 very large areas or challenges that Ent had coming into their engagement with Creatio. And they also had a very tight timeline to get this deployed, right? So they felt that they were missing opportunities and creating not dissatisfaction, but some confusion with members. So they wanted to address this very quickly, because one thing I will say about Ent, they are truly driven by their member experience. So they had a tight timeline to get these 2 challenges up and running. And because of the low-code aspect of our platform and being able to configure user interfaces and processes very easily, they were able to deploy the solution in just 3.5 months and start to realize the benefits of that immediately. Because they saw the flexibility of the platform to meet these 2 specific challenges, Ent is now looking at Creatio to be their member engagement platform across their entire organization. So every employee will start to utilize the Creatio platform to manage customer interactions, manage customer data. Everybody will be utilizing the same tool, reading from the same information, all of the same data, and then being able to coordinate efforts across that. So we're very excited. Ent is a very forward-thinking organization. They truly are at the cutting edge of their industry within the markets that they serve, and they're growing very rapidly. So very good example of how credit unions can benefit from a platform that can not only create those member profiles, but also drive the processes across multiple systems, creating a seamless integration between front office and back office as well.
Great, thank you so much, Eric. Thank you for that great description and these excellent customer cases. I think these were really beneficial for our viewers today. So now let's take some questions, because we've gotten some great questions from you all from the audience. So Eric, how do credit unions deal with having limited access to financial and human resource capital as it relates to project management, tool acquisition, and the right level of skills or expertise to implement a solution?
Yeah, great question, because that's a challenge not only credit unions face, but most organizations as well. IT departments are taxed with requests from the business side of the house. There's usually a limitation on human capital, as well as everybody has to think about the financial implications of developing new tools and how they manage. So the way that we look at it from a Creatio perspective, and I mentioned it a little bit, and Corey talked about our superpowers, is the way we see to address both of those concerns is through low-code development. And if you're not familiar with what low-code really is about having a system that you don't need any heavy developer skills. You don't need to be a coder to develop user interfaces or integrations into other applications. So we take a low-code approach that can significantly reduce the costs with implementing a tool. Also implement quicker. We gave that case study of Ent, where they were able to get up and running in 3.5 months, but that's because they were able to configure the platform to exactly the needs that they had by configuring the tool very simply with low-code technology. So from a creation perspective, that's how we see when you have limited financial or limited resources from a staff perspective, having a tool that can help build very quickly and configure very quickly and integrate very quickly will help alleviate those two scenarios.
Great, thank you, Eric. And our next question that we'll take from the chat is, how scalable are low-code applications in contrast to big CRMs?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's virtually no limit to the configurability of low-code applications. So when we talk about scalability of low-code applications, we think about the ability to grow with the organization. So a lot of times, what we'll run into with big CRM players is that they will have a lot of out-of-the-box processes that they utilize to sell to their customers. So they have these processes in place, and it's great at the forefront, you have it, but inevitably these out-of-the-box solutions always need some sort of configuration. So the ability to perform these configurations will limit your ability to scale at a rapid pace, where low-code applications enable you to create with, again, we're not on any proprietary language. You don't need any coding skills. Because the flexibility of the platform, you're able to scale very quickly to changing business requirements. So I think that's where we see the biggest gap between low-code applications and the larger CRMs. Larger CRMs, again, will have require a lot of development resources. They're written in specific coding languages. All of that has to go into a product backlog that goes into administrator or a coder that needs to make those changes. So scaling to changes is very difficult with the larger CRMs. Having a low-code application enables you to do that very quickly at the business analyst level. So you can use less expensive resources, develop quicker. I think low-code applications, there's a study out there that says they could speed up application development by 50%. So you're able to develop faster, you're able to scale quicker, and it's not as cumbersome to manage as some of the larger CRMs.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Eric, and definitely see your point there. That's a great point. Now let's look at our next question. How can this solution help increase collaboration between the branches and regions to deepen relationships with members and drive referrals?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. So again, a lot of times, the branch locations, office locations, contact centers, everybody is kind of siloed into what they're dealing with in their specific market. So what we see is there's a lot of disconnected communications across credit unions. So again, someone may be coming into a local branch but live in a different area. Or there may be situations where they have a single product but not know that there are other products available throughout the credit union. So how we coordinate that or create better communication strategies is to, again, have everybody utilizing a single view of that member record. So understanding that complete member profile, being able to collaborate quickly regardless of where your location is, and regardless of what your function is within the credit union. If everybody's reading from that same hymnal, it's very easy to create collaboration between branch locations. Again, handoff leads. So again, if someone walked into a branch location, wanted to talk to somebody about mortgage lending, you can quickly and easily connect, that engagement with, someone, a member of your mortgage lending team. So being able to hand off those opportunities very quickly and collaborate regardless of where your location is or what your function is within the credit union. That's really what a CRM can help do, right? It brings all of that together. So that way you can create those better experiences and those better collaboration between your teams.
Great, thank you, Eric. Let's take another question because we have some time here. How can a CRM solution improve staff productivity?
Yeah, staff productivity, absolutely. So if we think about, again, we talked about empowering the employees. And I had mentioned that every frontline employee that I've talked to at a credit union, they really do have that corporate strategy at the core of their interactions, right? They really want to provide the best member experience, but a lot of times they can't because it's a lack of visibility into specific tools. They're not empowered with the ability to get maybe things like approvals or coordinate the document flow within a specific process. So they're just kind of left to all of these different manual processes that they have. So by empowering them with tools that will make their job easier, so things like, whether that's document management through the CRM, having that auto-populate multiple documents, have it automatically send it out for approval or on to the next stage within that process without them having to physically manage that from system to system, is really what's going to enable them to become more efficient. Right now, if you were to go into any branch location of a credit union that's not utilizing a CRM and ask them how many different systems they have to access for a specific member transaction, they could be accessing as much as 10 different applications just to manage that one interaction with the member. So being able to streamline that into a single interface is going to make them more productive because they don't have to juggle between multiple systems to make that happen.
Excellent, thanks, Eric. All right, so let's move on to another question that we received. What are the biggest business benefits of CRM for credit unions? And I know we talked about this, but maybe you could just give your personal opinion here. That from the customer cases that we also walked through, what would you say are the three biggest benefits?
Yeah, so number one, first and foremost, is it's going to create better member experiences. If we think about credit unions, they're a very different business model than banks or other financial institutions. They're member-driven organizations. They don't have investors. Their investors are their members, right? They are part owners of the organization. So creating better member experiences is of really what's on top of mind for all credit unions, providing these great member experiences. And really a CRM helps you do that because we talked a lot about siloed data. We talked about a lot of disconnected systems, legacy systems that just aren't able to build profiles, run analytics, understand preferences, whether that's, building a householding infrastructure, having that ability to build that and understand it within the CRM is really what's going to lead to better member experiences, because once you understand members' preferences and goals, you can better serve them without, taking a shotgun approach like one size fits all for all members. So that's number one. Number two, again, it's going to interconnect processes across the credit union. So again, we're taking the risk out of having multiple systems by combining it into a single interface. When you have to coordinate processes across multiple systems, that leaves a lot of room for points of failure. Something might break down in that if you don't have a tool that's going to streamline that across the organization. So that would be my second biggest benefit, would be that it is going to help them streamline those processes and also reduce risk, compliance risk, things of that nature. There's less points of failure when you have a CRM in place that's managing, not only just a CRM, but a process-driven CRM to manage all of that and coordinate all of that across the organization. So that's number two. And number three, well, I guess you could probably put this one to number one depending upon the goals, but what I find when I talk to credit unions, this is probably the order. Number three, it's going to help them, drive additional deposits and revenue for the organization, right? Because if you think about, how credit unions operate, they have lending practices. So lending is what brings in more revenue. They don't necessarily get that off of the deposits, but they need the deposits to back up how much that they can lend. So it's all about gaining more share of wallet, with those members. So the third benefit is really, let's increase the number of products that members are utilizing, so therefore we can lend more money. So it's going to help drive that revenue stream directly into the credit union. So I would say that's the third biggest benefit.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Eric. I think we're probably out of time to take on a whole nother question from the audience, but we do want to just reiterate that we will be answering any unanswered questions from the chat today offline. We will also be following up with a recording of the webinar to anyone who registered as a participant today. We want to thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us for Creatio's webinar. And Eric, thank you for leading such a great discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Cray. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a great afternoon.